Morning, everyone. Welcome back to the Lookout Wildfire Report. Today we're talking about the Caldor Fire that's threatening South Lake Tahoe, California. Today's August 30th. Yesterday was a big day on the fire. Fire made a giant run out to the east. Here's some imagery. We're going to take you through some 3D imagery of the fire using heat mapping from this morning. Here's an image showing the location of the fire near Echo Lake and Echo Summit in relation to Myers, South Lake Tahoe, and Fallen Leaf Lake. The fire's run yesterday was influenced by up canyon winds on the South Fork American River, blowing up from the valley up through Placerville. Those fanned the fire kind of through this gun sight notch. If you think of Highway 50 as being this kind of sneak route to get through the Sierra, in your car, it's also a route for the wind, and the wind likes to go the easiest way. So it brought fire right to Echo Summit. So here's Echo Lake, here's Echo Summit. Here's the fire at about 3:30 in the morning. The white line is from earlier in the evening when we got our first flight on it for the evening, and then the little orange dots are spot fires. And so you can see that every one of these little spot fires, they're quickly growing to be their own fire. And that tells us something about the extraordinary dryness of the fuels in our forest right now. The fire is at about 7,500 feet elevation right now, and we're just not used to seeing fires, burn this actively at night at this elevation. Here's just a little bit of a look. The fire is slopped over the ridge to the south of Echo Lake. There's a few spot fires out here in this basin near Ralston Lake, but for the most part, the fire's been on top of the ridge. So what we're going to do here is we're going to look at the fire, and then we're going to make our way kind of around it in a clockwise direction. Obviously, the biggest threat the fire's posing right now is to the communities in Christmas Valley and Myers, but it's also posing a threat to the Carson Range. The fire, we're worried about the fire getting into the community here, obviously, but as we're fighting fires, trying to save homes in here, it's very likely that the fire is going to continue across Highway 89 and up into the Carson Range. So in general, this mapping we're showing you is heat imagery that's flown by airplanes at night, sometimes in the day, and they're scanning the landscape looking for heat. So as we move down now the southeast side of the fire, you can see these black lines. These are bulldozer fire lines that have been put in the last week. This is Strawberry and Highway 50 running through the middle of the image down towards Placerville. And so we're going to head over here towards Kirkwood. We're south of the east part of the fire. Here's Kirkwood. A big part of the story on this side of the fire is that over the past few days, firefighters put in a lot of bulldozer line here. The fire made a big run about a week ago up to the top of this mountain here, Bald Mountain, and then it started backing down the backside. And once it was done running up out of Silver Fork of the American River here, it kind of slowed down, bought some time for firefighters, and they put in a whole bunch of bulldozer lines here. And usually what happens with bulldozer lines is you put them in, and then you do what's called a firing operation. So once we've scraped a big, wide, dirt road basically through the forest, we come in usually at night, and we light off the inside of that, depriving fire of the fuel it needs to keep spreading. So those firing operations have held all the way through here. It's just that down in the more difficult areas to access, there were problems for days with some spot fires over the firing operation, over the dozer lines down in here. And a couple nights ago, morning before last, actually yesterday morning, the fire crossed dozer lines down by Strawberry. We'll get back to that. As we come back along the southeast side of the fire here, from Kirkwood, this is Silver Lake, and we've got, this is the Caples fire. It's about 3,500 acres, and there's a really interesting story here with this fire, in that it was a prescribed fire, a major project that crews came in and spent a lot of time cutting small trees and brush and piling it and burning it, and then they came in the fall to burn it in 2019, and after a couple of days of burning, the fire kind of escaped control. It crept, the piles just kind of turned into small fires. And after fighting it for about a week, the Forest Service declared it a wildfire and got a bunch of resources and put it out. And at the time, it was a kind of a big deal politically. There's a lot of criticism of how it was handled and complaints about smoke. But what we can say about this project now is that the fire has stopped when it got here. There was dozer line along the top of it that opened up control lines from the previous fire. The objectives of this burn were to reduce fuels. As you can see, most of the big trees were still alive after the fire. So that just shows us, why people are talking about doing big prescribed burns and working at the landscape scale. When we talk about scaling up the pace and scale of fuels treatment and forest management, we're talking about doing big projects like this, because small projects just, even this project, the fire has kind of outflanked it, but it has bought advantage for Kirkwood. Without this project, it's really likely that the fire would already be working its way through the granite and threatening Kirkwood. So even though it was kind of a black eye at the time, now it looks more like a success story, and just showing us that we really need to do large scale prescribed burning and fuels management. This area, as you can see, red shows active, intense heat. Yellow is areas that are cooling down. You can see that the fire has been extremely active on this southeast flank for the past couple days, and there haven't been a lot of control opportunities in there. Also, there's been a lot of emphasis on protecting structures along the Highway 50 corridor, especially around Pollock Pines and Strawberry. So on a fire this big, you just don't have enough firefighters to go all the way around it in a really coordinated way. A couple of days ago, when a fire first made its big run, it had something like 150 miles of perimeter, and we had something like 1,500 firefighters. But firefighters have to rest too. So if you have 1,500 firefighters on a fire, you might only have 750 that are actually out available to fight fire. So that meant that we had 7.5. We had 5 firefighters per mile of fire line that we had to deal with for a while there. So that's why fires grow large. Is just once they escape and become large, there's a limited amount we can do with the human workforce and equipment and everything else we can get a hold of. So you can see that this whole side of the fire now, from down by Somerset all the way up to where it's active here, it's all looking pretty cold. It's all cooling off. One of the reasons for that is because the fire took off and ran to the northeast. And so this was kind of the heel of the fire. The heel is, when the fire starts burning and burns away from you, you're standing at the heel. And the front of the fire is called the head. And the heel is usually cooler. Fire's burning away, so the smoke's going away. So we were able to use a lot of air tankers and get a lot of line in this as the fire was burning away from it. So this whole kind of what we'd call the heel of the fire now is really cooling off. There's no new fire spread down the middle fork of the Consumnes River between Omo Ranch and Somerset. This was hot for a couple of days, and there were some big firing operations, and a lot of dozer line got put in, but it hasn't moved for days. This part of the fire between Happy Valley over towards Grizzly Flats also been very cold for at least a week. The only part of the fire down here that is still active is in Butte Creek. The fire kind of spread up out of Camp Creek here a couple of days ago. Got over dozer lines, and one thing that really made it difficult to control this is that previous 3 days we just had smoke for most of the day, and we weren't able to use the aircraft that really buy us our biggest advantages to get in here. Anyway, that's about the extent of the heat on this flank of the fire, which has been a really amazing firefight to watch unfold, just because we've got an incredibly dense urban interface here, coming down Pollock Pines all the way down into Placerville, and there was real potential for extremely bad things to happen here. So aggressive firefighting, dozer lines in people's backyards, firing operations right off people's porches. They pulled it off. It's pretty amazing. Very few structures lost in this whole area. Coming up Sly Park Lake, also still really cold. A few hot spots in the interior of the fire. The white is the perimeter of the fire here. So as we come up Highway 50 now, we're above Camino, headed up towards Whitehall. There's still some active fire in here where the fire is backing down the slope. A lot of the fire here burned with backing fire spread. So that means that, fires like to run uphill. And when they back downhill, usually it's with a lot lower intensity. So, as you drive a lot of this stuff after the fire, you'll probably see a lot of the big trees survive the fire. And this is kind of what we do during prescribed burning is we light at the top of the hill in general, and we let the fire back down. And then maybe we light some strips as we go. We'll light a strip, and then we'll light another strip below there as it goes. But we can control what we call the heading fire. You don't want to light a fire at the bottom of the hill and have it just rip to the top, because that's how fire spreads best. And we can really see how that happened as we move farther up the river here. Coming around to Kybers, we had a spot fire here at the very kind of early stages of the big blow up of the fire. And that spot then, it got held along the top, but it's been held fairly well in the canyon. As you can see, Wrights Lake is up here, and I've had some people asking about conditions there. The fire has been held really well within the canyon. You can see that we've had some spread up out of the canyon, but it's still within the dozer lines on the north flank of the fire. So now we're up to about Strawberry, and this is really where yesterday's story begins. Yesterday morning, the fire got across these dozer lines here that were keeping the fire south of Strawberry. Also, there was fire on this side of Strawberry that spotted across. So yesterday morning when we started the day, there was a large spot fire here. There was a large spot fire up at Lover's Leap, and fire was across the dozer lines here. And what happened is, as the day went on yesterday, the fire really split into three heads, one head being on the north side of the river, and the north side of Highway 50, one starting at Lover's Leap going right up the 50 over Camp Sacramento, and another one that kind of ran over this hill here, this ridge between Sierra at Tahoe and Strawberry Creek. So compromised, it just blew right over all these dozer lines. And what we've been seeing this year, but in general, is that dozer lines, they don't really stop a fire like this unless you have time to organize a firing operation. And, in thick fuels like this, it can take a week to prepare for a major firing operation. We have to come in and we have to cut all the snags that could burn and fall across the line after it's lit. We have to reduce fuels on both sides of the line. We have to get rid of all this brush that we cut. So it takes a lot of work to prepare a major firing operation. And these dozer lines were kind of a Hail Mary. There wasn't a lot of chance they would succeed just because we didn't really have time to do enough prep. The ones where we had a little more time to get fire on the ground have held. But that's a theme with firefighting this year in general, is that these fires are outpacing us. And so when you hear someone say, oh yeah, the fire's just outpacing us, it just means that we don't have time to get out in front of it, adequately prepare a major firing operation, and fire that before the fire gets there. So these three flanks, these three heads of yesterday, two of them grew together overnight. One thing we were talking about yesterday on the Lookout website is just that there's this concept with firefighters that's called alignment. And alignment means when you've got a fire that's at the bottom of a canyon or bottom of a hill that can run up the hill with the wind behind it, that's what we call alignment. So that happened yesterday here at Camp Sacramento. The fire had alignment to run this whole basin basically because the wind was blowing it up the hill through heavy fuel and up downwind. So the wind was blowing it this way. So you can see, that just, when that happens, there's potential for these major runs. So now that we've talked about the backing fire, that's one thing we have got going for us today, is that the fire is not going to run uphill into Christmas Valley. It's going to have to burn downhill. The winds are blowing from the southwest today, so we expect the fire to continue to spread, and we don't really have the terrain just doesn't give us tactical opportunities for a coordinated effort to stop the fire here. The fire is well established over the edge of the rim above Echo Summit. So the question now is just, how is it going to move southwest? Is it going to move more as a front? Is it going to move as spots? How will it become engaged down here? We're going to have a lot of people fighting fire in the neighborhoods today. It's difficult down in flats like this in the chaos of a firefight to really know what's going on all around you. So it's very dangerous conditions for the firefighters on the ground here. And as we said before, it's highly likely that the fire will get in the neighborhood here, cross, and then continue out into the Carson Range. What you can see, this purple out here, is the Tamarack fire from earlier in this year. Definitely hope that it doesn't get that far. But what we've seen a lot recently is just that large fires on the landscape, large recent fires, are what controls where we pick up fires like this one. I'm not saying I think it's going to go that far. I'm just pointing out that in relative terms, where the Tamarack fire is compared to our current fire. Another thing here that's interesting from a fire behavior perspective and affects the kind of overall potential of the fire to spread is this is the Angora fire. Burned 3,000 acres in 2007. And there's a lot of brush in here. A lot of this was really burned intensely. And so an area like this without a lot of trees buys advantages for using air tankers. It's just to show, one thing that shows us is that fires, the prevailing weather here carries fires in this direction. And so we often look at what a fire's done in the past to understand what a new fire might do. So with the southwest winds, there is worry that if this fire becomes established down in here, that it could carry up to the northeast. So that's our briefing for now. We'll be updating our Twitter, which is wildland_ZKO, ZKO, and our website, which is the-lookout.org, as we have more information. And what we do promise you is that we will have morning updates every day by 9. Depending on what else is going on, we may not have evening updates, especially if we don't get updated infrared before it's bedtime. So thanks for watching. If this information is helpful to you, we're supported by users, and we have donate tabs on thelookout.org. So we appreciate everyone's support, appreciate people's emails. If you send me an email, there's a link on the Lookout. If you send me an email with a specific inquiry and I do have information, I'll do what I can to answer it for you. Thanks a lot, and good luck to everyone.